Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all the return of the Top 5 video segment right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, and finally, I'm here to bring you all the latest in this week's Top 5 video segment, and this is my list of my Top 5 favorite Batman Beyond episodes. Now, I decided to go ahead and make this list because Batman Beyond is one of my all-time favorite animated series, and it's definitely amongst my favorite DC animated series. And I share it with friends all the time, I share it with people all the time that I really love Batman Beyond. One of the reasons that it's always been so enduring for me is because this is my favorite Batman. I've always said, Bruce Wayne, he's been around since 1939. That's my grandfather's Batman. That's my father's Batman. Terry McGinnis, okay, this was a new character we were introduced to when the series launched in 1999. I was 10 years old, so this was a new character for me to experience. Also, this was one of the first new lineage Batmans that wasn't a previous incarnation of the Bat family. This wasn't Dick Grayson, this wasn't Jason Todd or Tim Drake or anything like that. So I was really intrigued by the character. I've always loved Terry as a character. I love Will Friedle's performance doing the voice acting, and I love the world in which Batman Beyond takes place. This futuristic cyberpunk Gotham. The artwork of it, the environment, the setting of it all, the music scores, and everything about the series, I just absolutely loved. So I decided to go ahead and make a list of my top 5 favorite episodes. Now, 2 things to take in consideration before I jump into this countdown. Number 1, this is not my list of the best episodes, okay? For an example, Rebirth Part 1 and 2, the 2-parter pilot episode is not on my list, and that's one of the best episodes of the series, I think. So this isn't a list of the best episodes, it's just a list of my favorite episodes. And because of that, this is the second thing. This was a very difficult list to make. I went into it thinking, all right, yeah, man, this is easy. I know what my top 5 favorite episodes are, and I had them in my head, and then I go online and I start looking up each individual episode, and I'm like, damn, that's a really good episode. Damn, that's a really good episode. I like that one too. So keep in mind, not an easy list to make, but I'm going to go ahead and we're going to kick things off. So let's start talking about some Batman Beyond. All right. So starting the countdown off at number 5 is season 3, episode 4, entitled Out of the Past. Now, in this episode, we get the return of Talia al Ghul. She returns to Neo Gotham, if you will, and she gives Bruce, old man Bruce, a proposition. The chance at eternal youth. And given the situation, given the time period of Batman Beyond, given the fact that, Terry is acting as the new Batman, Bruce is somewhat semi-retired, he's mostly the mentor and the tech support in this series. So Bruce being given this opportunity to, get some of his younger self back and potentially even don the cape and cowl himself once again, this creates a very interesting story in this episode. Now, the reason why this made it on my top 5 list is because it has quite possibly the best plot twist in the entire series. And what is that? Okay, so Talia returns to Neo Gotham. She gives Bruce the offer of eternal youth. And of course, this is through the Lazarus Pit. Now, we find out in the episode that apparently, years ago, Bruce and Talia actually teamed up to defeat Raish. Because at this point, Raish, the Lazarus Pit was no longer keeping him alive and whatnot. And so he was in a weakened state and they were able to pull that off. The plot twist, however, that I didn't even see coming was the idea that Talia was actually Raish the entire time. Raish had discovered a way, granted with the new technology of the time period, to rewrite his mind into Talia's body, and he was controlling her the entire time. And his end game, which I definitely didn't see coming, is that he wanted Bruce's body as the new vessel for his mind. So that was that still to this day, when I think about it, that is such a sick and twisted plot twist. Definitely didn't see that coming, and I absolutely loved it. Also, another reason is because this is one of the few episodes in the series where we do get the return of a previous villain from Batman the Animated Series. And it's one of the things that I've always liked about Batman Beyond is that it wasn't simply a reboot. It wasn't simply a rehash of what we got in Batman the Animated Series. They weren't just going to go ahead, put a younger person in the bat suit and then have him go up against all these different, all of these different legacy characters of Batman's rogue gallery. No, Terry had his own rogues gallery with all of his own villains. So every now and then, we would get the return of a Batman villain. And I think also, here's another thing too, though. Even with the few cameos and whatnot that we got from villains from the original series, this episode with Talia, or Raish, if you will, this is also one of the few moments in the series where the villain returned as themselves. I think the only other moment in the series where we get the legitimate villain from the original series was with Mr. Freeze in season 1, when he actually gets a new body and whatnot. But anyway, so that's why Out of the Past makes it's number 5 on my top 5 favorites list. Number 4 on my top 5 favorite Batman Beyond episodes is season 1, episode 10, entitled Shriek. Shriek introduces one of the mainstays of the Batman Beyond Rogues Gallery. Shriek is an inventor who creates a suit that allows him to manipulate sound. Now, he's used by Blight, who is pretty much the main villain of the series, or at least for the first season, to pretty much take Bruce Wayne out of the factor so that he can go ahead and commandeer his company. And the way in which Shriek does this is he creates a micro sound chip that he places on Bruce's head, and he starts feeding him voices to make Bruce think that he's going insane. So much so to the point where Bruce actually gets committed to a mental institution in the episode. And so throughout the episode, Terry has to figure out whether or not this is legitimate. Is Bruce really going insane? Has all the years, and the dual personality of Bruce Wayne and Batman finally gotten the best of him? What's really going on? And so throughout the episode, Terry has to uncover this mystery. But what I love about it is that even though Bruce is the target of the episode, even though he's the one that's attacked, he's not entirely a victim, because Bruce does figure out that, hey, someone is messing with my mind, and this is how they do it. So why is this on my top 5 favorite list? Well, Shriek is one of my favorite villains in the series. As I mentioned before, he's one of the new villains that was created for the series. I love Shriek's ability. I even I love his suit and whatnot. But also because this episode has one of my favorite exchanges in the entire series. So at the end of the episode, after Shriek's been defeated and Terry and Bruce are having a conversation, Terry asks Bruce, how did you know that you weren't going insane? How did you know that the voices weren't actually in your head? Bruce tells Terry, because the voice kept calling me Bruce. And Terry says, what do you mean? Bruce says, that's not what I call myself in my head. And Terry responds with, yeah, but that's my name now. And that's Bruce saying that, no, I don't call myself Bruce. I call myself Batman. And I dug that because it does also play into that whole theme of, the whole idea that who is the real who is Bruce Wayne really? Is he the Bruce Wayne that he portrays for the general public, or is he really Batman? Is that who he really is? So that's why I dug this episode so much. Now, number 3 on my list is season 2, episode 14, entitled Eyewitness. Eyewitness. In this episode, Terry gets framed for cold-blood murdering a villain, and this puts him at the crosshairs of Commissioner Barbara Gordon, formerly known as Batgirl. Now, what's really cool about this episode and what's really cool about this conflict is because Barbara has always been suspicious of Terry from Jump Street. She immediately figures out who this new Batman is. She immediately figures out, oh, Bruce has a new herald, and once she finds out that it's Terry, okay, there's 2 reasons why she doesn't trust Terry. Number 1, because he is working for Bruce. Barbara has been in those shoes before, and she knows what it's like being one of Bruce Wayne's heralds, being one of Batman's wards. She knows what that life is like, and she knows it doesn't end well, especially since Batman Beyond is in continuity with the rest of the Timverse series. This is in continuity with Batman the Animated Series, and this also takes place before Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, which is still within the continuity of that universe. Given what happens to Tim Drake in that movie, Barbara, more than anyone else, she knows nothing good can come of working with Bruce Wayne. Nothing good can come with donning the cape and cowl. So, number one, she's suspicious of Terry and Bruce by extension. Number two, because she looks into Terry's backstory. She looks into his past and she knows, Terry was a juvenile delinquent. That in and of itself is enough for her to suspect Terry. So when she bears witness to him killing a villain, she puts out an all-out manhunt to bring Batman in. And it's pretty much the episode where Terry is made public enemy number one. He's a fugitive. He's on the run. He's a renegade. Now, by episode end, they discover that Spellbinder, another one of the original villains created for this series, was responsible for creating this illusion that Terry had actually killed this villain. And so once again, it's one of my favorites because Spellbinder, he's one of my favorite villains of the series. I love Spellbinder. I love his abilities to go ahead and create these illusions for people, but also because of Barbara Gordon's involvement in the episode and just the way that her relationship with Bruce and then her relationship with Terry, that the three of them, the way those characters bounce off of each other is always compelling and it's always good. So that's why that's one of my favorite episodes. Now, number two on the list, and some of you all might have called this, but I'm pretty sure you thought this was my number one. Number two on the list is season 3, episodes 10 and 11. I had to do it. I had to count both episodes because it is one continuous story, but it's season 3, episode 10 and 11, The Call. This episode, oh my God, I love this episode so much. This episode, Terry gets recruited by the Justice League, and Superman, leader of the Justice League Unlimited, which is the official name for this futuristic team of the Justice League, he recruits Terry. He recruits Batman, really, because they do mention it in the episode. I didn't come here to recruit Terry McGinnis. I came here to recruit Batman. He recruits Batman in order to sniff out a traitor amongst the team. And throughout the 2 episodes, we actually find out that Superman is in fact the traitor, that he's been orchestrating these natural disasters, these catastrophes. Now, what's really cool about this, though, is by the end of the episode, we find out that Superman was actually being controlled by the real villain of the episode, which is Starro. Now, what I dug, okay, first and foremost, what I dug about this episode, it's the Justice League. Come on, guys, this is, towards the end, this is actually the second to last episode that was produced for the series before it was canceled. And so we've gotten 2.5, damn near 3 full seasons where Terry's been operating on his own, and now this is when we get the expanded universe of the Timverse introduced in this series with the introduction of this new Justice League. Justice League, that's probably, yeah, that is my favorite DC animated series. It's my favorite of the Timverse. And so being able to see some of these characters and new characters too. The only character that is a member of the original Justice League that's still here in this episode is Superman. All the other characters are new, Barda, Warhawk, and the new Green Lantern and whatnot. So, but yeah, just getting to see Terry with the Justice League, getting to see him work with other heroes is always a pleasure to see on screen, and I dug it. I also dug it because the decision to make Starro the main villain of the episode, and Starro, for my comic book aficionados, for those of you who know, Starro was the first ever Justice League of America villain. In Justice League of America issue 1, that kicked off the Silver Age of comics for DC, Starro was that villain. So the fact that they went back to draw influence from that source material, I thought that was pretty cool. And of course, let's face it, Superman. Old man Superman is in this episode. How can you not love it? You know what I mean? So that's why it goes ahead and it makes it on my list. And now that brings me to my number 1 all-time favorite episode of Batman Beyond. Coming in at number 1 is season 1, episode 6, entitled Dead Man's Hand. Okay, so in this episode, Terry is still very much early on taking on, donning the cape and cowl, being Batman. This is only the 6th episode in the series so far. And Terry is already starting to meet conflict with the idea of being Batman and having a normal life. He's already starting to wrestle with that conflict. And what ends up happening is Dana, his girlfriend, she dumps him because he's no longer as committed to their relationship as he was before, because now he has this new job. And for the record, I'll go ahead and I'll throw this out now. I never cared for Dana's character. I always thought she was a weak supporting character. Even as a supporting character, I always thought she was a weak supporting character. I never really cared for her as Terry's love interest. I always thought he could do better. I'm actually a member of the fandom that think him and Max should have gotten together. So Dana dumps Terry, and swiftly after, he meets this girl named Melanie who shares Terry's problems. You know, she has this, she's new to Gotham, and she has these obligations that prevent her from living a normal teenage life. And so since her and Terry have that in common, they sort of develop this bond, they have this shared camaraderie, and they start to develop a romance with each other. Now, we find out later in the episode, Melanie is actually a member of the Royal Flush Gang. And so it's the classic story of, oh, it's the hero and it's the villain who they meet outside of their respective costume selves. They sort of develop a relationship, but because of the obligations they have, Terry being Batman and Melanie being 10, that puts them on opposite odds of each other, and eventually they have to cross blows. Now, the reason why I love this episode so much, I mean, come on, let's face it, guys, especially, you know, granted, given the age I was around the time that this happened and whatnot, of course, I was, you know, late adolescence, early preteen. So, you know, the whole teenage romance thing I could sort of relate to. But let's be real, though. All of us can relate to this. The idea of you cannot be with the person you want to be with because of obligations beyond yourself, right? Everyone can relate to that at some point in time. Hell, that's the whole theme of Romeo and Juliet that makes that so endearing, while we're still reading that in high school, you know, centuries after Shakespeare wrote it. The idea of two lovers who cannot be together because of obligations outside themselves. That theme will never get old. Also because it does draw a direct reference, a direct comparison, and it's actually referenced at the end of this episode to Bruce and Selina, to Batman and Catwoman. That same sort of, you know, forbidden romance of the hero and the villain. Also, it introduces the Royal Flush Gang into the episode, and I actually think this is the first time we've seen the Royal Flush Gang in the Timverse. I think when this came out in '99, the Royal Flush Gang hadn't been introduced into the Timverse yet. I could be wrong on that. If you guys find an episode, I do not remember them being in Batman the Animated Series or Superman the Animated Series. Now, they do appear later on in like Justice League, but I've always liked the Royal Flush Gang. I've always liked their gimmick. I always thought they were a cool villain team. And so to bring them back into the series and to have Terry sort of caught in this forbidden love, you know, romance sort of bit, I really dug that about the series. And like I said, I can relate to it. Also, this episode has my favorite exchange in the entire series. When Terry and Bruce, when they're talking, they're having an argument. Pretty much Terry is, you know, Terry is telling Bruce, you know, hey, you know, I decided to go ahead and help you out. I want to do this, but at the same time, I want my own life. And he actually starts accusing Bruce. He was like, you know what? It's like, you want everybody. It's like, I can see why Robin, I can see why Dick and Barbara, why they abandoned you, because you want everyone to end up like you, a lonely, old, bitter man. And so, you know, it really, that argument, it's so loaded, because it really does have sort of like that father-son canon behind it. Like, well, and of course this is before epilogue, when we found out that Terry actually is Bruce's biological son, which I never cared for that plot twist. But to have Terry and Bruce sort of going at it, and then finally the conversation ends, my favorite line in the entire series. Terry says, "It won't matter if I take one night off from being Batman, will it?" And Bruce grabs Terry by the collar and tells him, "One night always makes the difference." I love that line so much. And yeah, that's true, because let's face it, Bruce lost his parents in one night, one instance, 1 second. When that trigger was pulled, he lost both his parents, and his life was completely, irreversibly changed forever. So, and once again, it's hindering back to that whole idea. It's like, you know, that cape and cowl, man. Heavy lies the head that bears that cowl, because that is such a huge responsibility for someone to take up. And this was pretty much one of the episodes where Terry had to learn that hard lesson. And by the end of it, you know, he does make the right choice and whatnot. And so, yeah, that's why that's my all-time favorite Batman Beyond episode. I love it, absolutely positively. So that concludes my top 5 favorite Batman Beyond episodes. I want to go ahead, I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. In the comments below, please feel free, share your thoughts on the episodes I discussed in this video, and share your list, your top 5 favorite Batman Beyond episodes. Go ahead, feel free, share them all in the comments below. If you like this video, thumb it up. Share it with other fans of Batman Beyond and other people you think would enjoy this video. And as always, be sure, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the OAW YouTube channel. Annotation will be above head. Now, also, since this is kicking off the return of the top 5 video segment, please, in the comments below, leave suggestions for next week's top 5 topic. And thumb up the one you want to see me discuss in next week's video. Leave a suggestion and then vote for the one you want to see me discuss. Coming down the wire tomorrow, please join me for the return of the discussion of the week video segment. I think you all will actually love the topic I've decided to discuss. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.